of Massachusetts. And Ella is kind of at the top of the screen. And instead of me talking about the Leadership Development Initiative, maybe I should just invite Ella to briefly describe a little bit about what that project is.
You know what? I'm going to do that in my presentation, Miguel. So unless you're ready for me to start, I mean, that's where I start off in my presentation. So I'm looking forward to telling you about our work and illustrating how what we talk about here is how we live out our mission. So should we go ahead and get started, or was there more that you wanted to share with the fine people that are here?
That's it. We should get started.
Okay, great. So I'll ask Julie to.
So if everyone could mute your webcam as we do a quick into the presentation mode. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Well, if you all are anything like I am, you are going to be wanting to sign off right at, I think the debate, I don't know if the debate's at 8 o'clock our time or 9 o'clock our time, but whatever time it is, we'll be done way before that, and may the best man win. I know who I want. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here on a weeknight. Last week, I told the fine people who came, I said, I know you're my people because you're showing up when you are probably exhausted from a day-long work, from having helped your kids with homework, from having prepared dinner, from having paid bills, and just gotten to the mountains of email that you found waiting for you when you got back to your homes or at this point in your day in your office. So I want you to know that I'm enormously grateful for your time and for your attention. And I am here because I so strongly believe that the kind of work that flattens the leadership structures of the church, that enables interdependent leadership, is really going to save us and is really going to enable us to reach into our spirits and our souls and find out where God is really calling us to as a people. So I'm really grateful to Miguel for offering me the opportunity to be here. Julie, how do I advance my slides? Next. Oh, there we go. All right. So a bit about LDI. Our mission is to develop prayerful and prophetic leaders who are agents of transformation for the mission of God in the world. We tend to focus on lay leadership teams. This is why teams and the whole concept of teams is so important to us. But for us, these teams are teams who are very much out in the world, which is where we believe God's people belong. Not necessarily cooped up in a church, but enlivened by the church to be prophetic leaders in the world, particularly in the world as it's manifested in the local communities. The people on my team, our challenge and our vision comes from the same dilemma. We believe that the church, as it's manifested today, particularly the Episcopal Church, is on the verge of losing its salt, its ability to really be relevant in the world. And we surmise that that comes from an overemphasis on an ecclesiology, that the church is somehow a refuge from culture. Now, I know we get out in front of a lot of issues, but the experience that the national church or the more public face of the church has is very different from the church that we experience on the ground, where we see churches that tend to have a kind of a closed loop mentality. And so what we're trying to do is help people come to a new and different understanding, and more importantly, develop a set of tools that will enable them to be open and to sort of claim their role as missional actors in the world. And we arrived at that conclusion on the basis of our own experience. The moments that we had in our own lives as Christians when we experienced God most intently and most deeply. And those were moments when we were literally acting outside of ourselves, be it in some sort of mission work or some kind of experience that we were doing in the name of God alongside someone else, where we had practiced self-forgetfulness. And so what we want to do is infuse a culture of self-forgetfulness on the part of the church, the idea that we will find ourselves by losing ourselves and finding and listening to God's Spirit in the act of losing ourselves. And we're also very inspired by the flat leadership structures that are prevalent in grassroots social movements. We've borrowed a lot of this work from our teacher, Marshall Gans, and we've adapted a lot of his work to sort of our theology and our way of understanding the world. But just borrowing from his definition of leadership, we've taken this to be very much a function of, or very much an idea of how we understand leadership too, and that is that leadership is taking responsibility for enabling others to achieve purpose in the face of uncertainty. Now, there are a lot of definitions of leadership out there. This is the one we claim, and we claim it for very specific reasons. The first one is that in taking responsibility, you are making a decision. It is not a position. It is not something that someone has appointed you to do. It is you assessing and is a screening team that is a closed loop, that doesn't engage others, that isn't always looking outward to see what it is, what sort of resources that they need from beyond their own little closed circle to enliven and generate new ideas. So those are two signs that you're on a screening team. You're definitely on a screening team if the people on your team aren't learning anything, growing over time, and if there's no internal coordination, you know you're on a screening team. I do a lot of work with a group called Rethink Health, and we are, our mission is, it's a very similar to LDI. We're using a lot of leadership practices and we're applying them to some of the bigger issues around public health. Everybody on the team I work with works remotely, and the job of coordinating a remote team is especially challenging. But I can say that I think that this whole idea of a team that coordinates with one another is definitely possible. Yet, a lot of times in churches, people sort of lean back and say, well, we didn't really have the time, and we really don't want to do this, and we got, you know, not everybody can come to the meeting, et cetera. There are a lot of excuses, I'd say, for why teams don't coordinate with one another. I'm saying if you can lift up why it matters, then chances are you can get a team to coordinate with one another. So you know you're on a really good team if these things are happening, and I'm sure there are other things, and I would invite you to add them into your chat box. But one thing that's not up here is that you know you're on a dream team when you are a team that prays together, in your team where you experience authentic spiritual community, where you can be who you really are. And the only way that you do that is through holding regular meetings, and to hold meetings that actually engage people instead of just talking to people and give report after report after report. Right? You know you're on a dream team if you're a team that goes through actually doing something, actually going out and doing something in the community. That's why in our LDI teams, we ask them to come to LDI with a project, with something that they aim to do in the world. Because these leadership skills that we endeavor to teach, you're not going to just learn them by listening to this webinar. I mean, I would, you know, or by coming to one of our trainings. You have to go out, and you have to go out and do it and reflect on it, and that's how you grow. So teams that take action together grow. You know you're on a dream team if everyone knows their roles, if it's a well-coordinated effort. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the fact that you've given it some thought and you've endeavored to create some sort of structure for that is extremely important. You know you're on a dream team if the relationships within the team are deepening and the sense of shared purpose is growing, and it's a group that is feeling more motivated to grow with you and to do the work and more empowered. They need less instruction. They need less of this is what I want you to do, and this is where you need to go, and this is what you need to be. They're claiming their own authority. And for the laity, claiming the authority that's been given to us by virtue of our baptismal covenant is so important in this economy that I'm describing here. And finally, you know you're on a dream team fundamentally because you're actually doing what you set out to do. You're meeting your goals. So how do you build this team? Well, I'm going to go through a few things. These are really basic, but I promise that if you do them with intention and if you can get your team members to agree to it, it works. It works, I know from my own experience. The first building block is to establish a very clear shared purpose, a deeply understood notion of why we're here. It's got to be motivational, consequential. It has to matter in the world, and everyone has to know it. This phrase in LDI of the idea that we want to create prayerful or develop prayerful and prophetic leaders, we repeat that every time we meet. That is a very important value for us. We are always returning to that shared purpose just to let it sink in again and again, because that keeps us inspired to do the work that we do. And we believe that it is very consequential. We've seen the kind of we've seen laity blossom by being able to work well in a team. Another building block of a good team is to have diversity in terms of the gifts and skills. So not everyone has what you have. Not everyone knows how to do what you know how to do. Different perspectives, different stories, different relationships throughout the congregation and throughout the community. And another very important building block, and I think this is one area where the church really stumbles, is on the idea of having clear, stable boundaries. So it's clear to everyone who belongs on the team. It's not a random. It's the same people who show up time and time again. So you know that this bounded team is the team that's authorized to act in the service of this shared purpose. That doesn't mean that you don't create structures for including others, but that you're intentional about creating those boundaries. You know, you need another building block is creating clear interdependent roles. The idea that we are developing a set of very explicit expectations for what each one of us is going to do. So there's no assumptions. There's no assumptions that people are going to get what they intend to get done. It's named. It's not implicit. It's explicit. It's equally shared work, and it's work that's done with a mind toward where your gifts are. You know, this week I have been dealing with a mismatch between a role I have on a team I'm working on and my own gifts and skills. I am terrible at calendaring, and I have been responsible for calendaring a work project out into a year, and I'm desperately afraid that I'm going to get it wrong. And that's an example of a situation where I've got a mismatch on my role. So think carefully about, you know, the roles that you assign each other in teams. And Sarah asks, you know, why is the church so afraid of boundaries? You know, I would love to hear other people answer that question. I think the church is afraid of asking people for commitments, and I think that that's why they're afraid of boundaries. I think they don't want to exclude everybody, but if you stop and think about it, if you're inviting someone into something really important, then it really is a sign of respect that you're structuring it in such a way such that the boundaries are clear to everybody. And as Julie said, at the top of the screen, right under the word sharing, is a little icon with the little man who's raising his hand. If you click on that, you can raise your hand, and then I'll figure out a way to, and then you can put your, I don't know, Julie, I don't know if, do they ask the question or do they just put it in the chat box? Can I just ask you now, Julie? Can you chime in?
Sure, I'm right here. We would love to have some conversation going. So those of you that have microphones, if you raise your hand, we'll call you by name and you can speak. If you're on the telephone, the same. or if you want to just type a question or a comment in the chat box, Miguel or I will be able to repeat it and Ella can answer it.
Yeah, it'd be really good. It'd be really good to hear from you all instead of having me just dither on. So this last piece about the building blocks of a good team, I think this is the part where we, I think in the church, have a really hard time setting a clear set of norms and expectations for how you'll respect each other and how you'll empower each other during your work together. And these are ground rules that are agreed upon by the whole team, and that there's a stated understanding of what happens, what do we do when one of those ground rules is broken. So let me just ask someone who's got a microphone if they've ever been in a meeting or in a vestry or another committee where someone is perennially late. What do you do? I know it's happened to you, so I expect to see some hands up. I see Joyce.
Joyce, go ahead. Can you speak to us?
Joyce, what do you do when what happens in your community when someone's perennially late? Beth, anybody? Looks like their mics are turned off, Julie.
I'm making sure that they're working from my side.
Okay.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What I do here in my community is I will ask the person after the meeting, if it's happened a few times, to see if there's something going on in the personal life that I can help them with, and just kind of find out what's going on from them personally that keeps them from getting to the meeting on time. It messes everything up, and then it slows the process. You have to catch them back up to what the current conversation is, how we got there, and where we're trying to go. And then it just delays the goals being accomplished. Oh, sorry, this is Eric Miller. You can see some eye rolling, and I feel a little bit resentful when it happens because most of the folks are on time, and it's showing disrespect to the process, and it seems like that person or persons doesn't understand what clear goals are for the group.
than it is to start again. That's
right.
not to say that it's not worth it, but it is harder.
It's harder. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of mental fortitude. So, and we're basically, the church is essentially a volunteer organization, and you know, the role of a leader in a church is to do the work of the church. It's a function of activating people, right? So you don't want to fire a volunteer. You don't want to kick anybody out. So how do you deal with that? You know, how do you deal with the idea that, you know, gosh, this isn't working. What do we do? And there isn't an easy answer to that. I know that in my own work, I've had to have some very difficult conversations. And what has led me to those conversations is just this thing that I had one situation with one particular team member when I was first kicking this initiative off the ground, where I never knew if he was going to show up to a meeting or not. And when he showed up to a meeting, it was like starting all over again. And the amount of stress that caused me ultimately led me to have a very difficult conversation. And the conversation went something like, this isn't working for either of us. What would you like to do? And I learned that it was a relief for him that I was able to bring that up, and that he was really looking for a way to bow out. So in having that conversation, as hard as it was, I was able to reform the team. And the thing is, there is a way that you can address this. And that is that every time you have somebody new join the team, that gives you a whole new opportunity to rebound the team. And I don't mean rebound as in, you know, kind of catch the ball and shoot again. It's in rebound, like the act of rebinding, the act of setting some new boundaries around the team. And that might be a way of establishing a new kind of a new condition for that team. So here's one way to think about that, Beth. And I'm putting up this meeting agenda because this meeting agenda is what we use for what we call launching teams and relaunching teams. And every time you have somebody new coming to a team, you might think about relaunching the team. And this is just an agenda, again, super obvious. Everybody here, we're all grown-ups. You've probably done this before. But every time someone's new, it's an opportunity to review your shared purpose. It's an opportunity to review your norms, particularly your norms around how people make decisions, right? It's an opportunity to just review the things or make more specific the things you haven't made specific yet. And it's just an opportunity to start new again. So when you want to bring someone new onto an existing team, and there is some pathology in the team around behaviors that have to do with that keep the team from performing effectively, I would encourage you to think about a relaunch and to say, okay, you know, with this new person, we have an opportunity to really hit the reset button, and that might open up conversations that would be otherwise hard to have about what it feels like to be on a team that doesn't work.
That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Joyce, do you have something you want to add? To work in the team. I'm just looking at your comment. Brutal, okay, wait. Can I invite, I can't really see the chat. Diane, can I invite you to share your comment with the group? I'm sorry, Denise Crenshaw. Raise your hand if you've heard of the Visions Guidelines. Raise your hand, yeah. Yeah, they are a very, I think, effective, wonderful set of guidelines that govern collective team behavior. And I'm the co-chair of our commission on ministry here in this diocese, and we structured a whole retreat around those guidelines, and it changed the way we work. It brought a whole new level of candor to our conversations. And it really kind of, all of the storytelling that we did around the Visions Guidelines, just kind of naming what our own perspectives were, what helped me understand why, say, I am an incredible, I am probably one of the most liberal people in the Episcopal Church, and I have people from all kinds of places in the ideological spectrum on this committee, and it really helped me understand why they say what they say, why they act the way that they act. So I will forward Miguel my copy of the Little Visions Guidelines, and you know, it's a wonderful resource for just helping create that authentic space. Joyce, you had something you wanted to say. I want to make sure I capture what your comments are. I see your hand is up, but are you able to turn your mic on, Joyce? Oh, thank you, Julie. No? Does anybody have any other questions or comments about anything that I've said here?
And if, this is Miguel, and if people, I'm realizing that maybe some people don't have their microphones on. I think that if you raise your hand, that will make it easier for Julie to connect your microphone. So that's one way. Or you could also enter your question into the chat, and I'm happy to, you know, read it out loud, or Ella can, obviously.
Okay, let's try Joyce again. She raised her hand. Does she have a mic that she can turn on? All right, so I'm just going to address what Joyce is bringing up, because it's a really, really common issue, this idea of people having long meetings. So I encourage you, if you have that problem, to develop an agenda that has, it's a timed agenda. And at the beginning of the meeting, you assign a timekeeper. And that timekeeper is empowered with the ability to say, we have to move on. Or if a particular agenda item is going past the amount of allotted time, that person is empowered to ask the meeting facilitator, okay, you've decided to go past the 15 minutes you allotted to this particular discussion item. How do you want to correct the time going forward? So it's incumbent upon the facilitator of the meeting to understand that time is going to be kept, and everybody in the meeting knows that, okay? So if you assign a timekeeper, empower the timekeeper to really keep the time, and show that you are 100% committed to getting people out by the stated time that you have said you're going to end the meeting. Over time, people start to understand it. People start to get it. And you'll have that person raise their hand or need to say something, and the question can be, okay, we have 2 minutes left. Is this an extremely urgent thing for you? And you'll find that people get more judicious about their comments. So I really believe that there is a way to deal with that. So I hope that that's addressed your question, Joyce. Beth, go ahead.
When you're working with all lay people and you're starting basically from scratch, and there isn't the level of commitment that people will even just all come to a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
How do you start and respect them enough to have expectations for them without them feeling like we're just volunteers?
Right.
You're expecting too much. We have a life. Is the
we have a life, we have
that
kids, whatever.
Yeah.
They're showing up for a reason, right? They're showing up for a reason. Even that initial toe in the water, they want to know if their time is going to be respected. They want to know if this is worth their while. They want to know that they are feeling like they're making a difference. And so I would suggest if you have a team like that, or you're trying to get a nascent initiative off the ground, that perhaps the best thing you can do in the first meeting isn't to go right to, let's plan, let's calendar, let's do this, let's do that. It's, we're going to take the first 20 minutes of this meeting, we're going to pray, we're going to listen to each other's stories. I'm going to find out why you're called to this church, why you were called to this meeting. I'm going to share something of my own story with you. We're going to take stock of all of that collectively, and we're going to do that every time we meet. For an hour and 20 minutes long versus an hour long. So that awakening question that someone's asking about in the chat box is exactly what I'm talking about. It could be something as simple as, name one thing in your day that caused you joy. Or it could be, even if you have no time, give me one word that expresses where you're at right now. Or what is the one thing you need to say in order to leave all of the things that you're carrying, that you bring into this meeting, out that door so that you can be completely present. The idea is that when they come into this meeting, they're not only coming in to engage in the consequential work that they're there to do, but they're also entering a space that doesn't feel like anything else in their lives. It doesn't feel like the school committee meeting. It doesn't feel like work. It is something unique, and it is steeped in the authentic experience of God. And as leaders, especially as lay leaders, it's our role to really help people get in touch with why we need to talk more about how God is working in our lives. We need to model that. Tom.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question around forming the core team that's going to then work on a project, of trying to sell the basic idea of, hi, let's get organized, let's do something. And I know it's involving doing those one-on-ones, but how do you work from one person to a core of 3 or 4 so you can get a core of 6 or 7 so you can then actually do it, those steps?
Okay. In the interest of full disclosure, I coached Tom and his team last year, and he was one of my best students. And I'm very happy that he's on this webinar, and he'll be one of our facilitators in this program year. We always start fundamentally with story. And I know that a number of you maybe had some experience with public narrative at one of the general conventions, God knows when, a few years back. And I'm not sure how that went, but we start with story. We start with the idea that we're all uniquely called, and that until we can really name that, and until we can really experience what it feels like to name that, we're going to be operating from the neck up. So we start with getting in touch with our own call, and that work of getting in touch with our own call helps us help others get in touch with theirs, because we learn how to ask the questions that we've asked ourselves of others. So we're modeling the kind of authentic Christian community that we seek to build. Now, let's say that Tom's out on this one-to-one, and he does see somebody that he wants to engage in terms of getting them to recruit the team. He wants to recruit them to be part of his team. Well, he invites them, right? And he says, well, come to my meeting and bring somebody else. And in the course of that meeting, they will learn more about each other. But you have the one-to-ones, yes, for the purpose of building community, but it's for the purpose of finding out who you want to be on your team. So the one-to-ones that we talked about last week are often for the purpose of building your team. Does that make sense, Tom? Did I answer your question?
Yes. Yes, that's helpful. It's trying to, the trick is trying to find where other people are at, and
that's right.
You just have to spend time paying attention
that you meet in your
and sharing the story.
Meetings, as I said last week. Not everybody you meet are going to be people that a relationship is a commitment to a shared future as much as it's a commitment to a shared past. So not everyone that you meet is going to be someone that you want to have a commitment to a shared future with. But until you meet them, until you talk to them, until you find out what makes them tick, until you find out what makes their heart skip, you're not going to know, really. So the first step is one-to-one, and then inviting people as a team. You're welcome.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Sarah is on our LDI team, and she's sharing some resource material around story that we use. This is nothing new to the Episcopal Church. My colleague Devin Anderson introduced this framework to the Episcopal Church many years ago, and we've just taken her good counsel, and we've put it to good use in this diocese. So I don't claim ownership for that at all. It's very much based on work that Devin did with Marshall Gans many years ago. Are there any other questions, as we have 3 minutes left? Miguel, can you say something about how people might go about evaluating what they did today or feedback?
Sure, yes. I have actually a link right here, which I will put into the chat box, which should send you to a survey about tonight's web conference. We will also be sending out an email with a link to the recording of tonight's web conference. And if you'd also like to just simply send me a link to tonight's recording of tonight's web conference and the survey, in case you don't get to it right now.
Some of our work.
And then if you also just want to send me an email about your thoughts, I'm writing my email
evening to be with us tonight. I very much appreciated your participation.
Those are various ways of offering some feedback.
Your, an ongoing dialogue. You can find out more about me and our work at diomathleads.org, and our program manager, Duncan Hilton, knows how to get a hold of me, and I would certainly love to entertain any of your questions or comments, and certainly feedback on how you just how today landed. And I'm especially grateful for the people from our diocese who logged in tonight, and I hope this is the beginning of a more intentional and generative relationship. So. God bless.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for attending.